Hello, welcome back to Ballroom Feed, another Technique Tuesday. This time we're gonna be talking about how to move your hips for a beginner. So I kind of wanted to do a how to move your hips series or a Cuban motion series, starting with this video, just showing you some basic ways on how to move your hips. So there's a few different ways you can move them. I think the easiest way we can talk about is natural pendulum, which I'm going to explain right now. So what I want you to do is start with one leg straight and one leg bent. So that way, from here, what we can do is sit into the hip of the straight leg. This may be more natural for some of you rather than others if you have more flexible hips. So I want you to imagine that you're kind of standing in line, waiting for something. You're waiting for the train or the bus or something like that, and you're standing on one side. What would you do? You kind of rest into the hip. Maybe you'd see some people going like this, but most of the time, we're kind of favoring one leg. We're never really standing in between 2 feet. So this naturally kind of happens in everyday life. So we're gonna try to mimic this motion now, okay? So again, having one leg bent, one leg straight, we're gonna allow the hip to settle slightly. We're sitting into this hip a little bit. Of course, we can exaggerate it, but for today, we're just talking about natural pendulum motion, okay? From side to side. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna shift our weight to the other foot. So we're gonna switch our feet, and then you could see that my hips slightly switched. So from here, just get comfy on this leg now. So whatever leg you're on, switch it up. So now we're gonna be standing on the opposite leg and letting the hip settle over the straight leg there. So if we just kind of stepped and switched, you can kind of see that my hips are moving side to side, okay? So for now, that's all we're focusing on is that natural pendulum. And today we're gonna be using the merengue dance to kind of just work into it because it's the easiest to start. So if you go from the side now, just so you can see, and I'm just gonna settle into one hip, I'm gonna change my weight and then switch the hip or allow that hip to switch. So this is something that definitely takes time to develop and kind of exaggerate through flexibility and mobility, all those good things. And that will definitely take time to develop, especially if you're tighter in the hips and you don't have much movement. But I think the first part is kind of allowing your hips to move. Sometimes in everyday life, maybe we don't really have this opportunity or we're sitting a lot, so the hips can get really, really tight. So this is a good way to practice loosening up the hips and allowing the movement to come in. And now you can see I have much more mobility just from switching my knees. So if we did it from side to side, we could just go shifting over one foot, keeping both of the legs straight. So we don't necessarily have to bend one knee. That's just one way to think about it. But another easy way is if we have both feet no wider than the shoulders, and we're just simply shifting over one leg, And when we do this, we're just allowing the hip to settle over the leg. You can bend the free knee or you can keep it straight. This isn't a matter of bending or straight today. It's really just about how do we access our hips while shifting our weight. And that will be by simply allowing the hip to relax and settle over the standing leg, okay? So this is another good way to practice and also to loosen up the hips. If you're feeling a little more flexible, try to kind of push our limits here because whatever we do here is eventually going to translate into our dancing, right? There is specific ways to do it. This is kind of I'd say step number 1 on your journey, but this is a good way to loosen up the hips and access those kind of muscles or stretching out those muscles, okay? So you can start, maybe starting side is actually easier, but then definitely starting in this position too, and then switching with the knees, just because keeping them straight is actually hard when you're in the center. I don't know how you do that. You naturally have to switch the knees there. Okay, so now that we have our side to side action, what we can do is start marching underneath ourselves. And just think of it like merengue if you're familiar with the dance. And don't get too complicated. We're not doing hip lift. We're not doing, delayed hip action like rhythm or anything like that quite yet. We're just talking about natural pendulum to get the hips to move. So if we're feeling rather stiff or we have no idea where to start because there's so many different ways to move your hips, there's so many more techniques and different, opinions about it out there. This is just for beginners on how do I move my hips even. So this is a great way to start and then apply it to maybe some basic easy dances. Merengue is a great one. You could do bachata, rumba, anything like that, any of the Latin dances, you could definitely start with this action here. So once you have this happening as we're stepping in place, you can play with the directions a little bit, maybe stepping side to side and switching it up. It doesn't need to be specific, going the other way. This is simply just allowing the hips to move as we're changing our weight. And this will get more specific later on, especially if we decide to continue and we wanna maybe get more technical about it. It might change up the way we're moving. But for now, this is just freeing up our hips and learning how to move while we're dancing, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it made sense. If anything, maybe you just loosened up your hips with me today or got an idea of one way on how to move your hips for beginners. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and stay tuned for more. This could also potentially be a whole course, which I think would be really fun because there's so much we can go into detail on this topic. So if you did want that, be sure to comment down below so we know and we'll get that started for you. That being said, be sure to check out our website, ballroomfree.com. We teach you a whole bunch of different dances up there, so go check it out, see what you like, and stay tuned for more, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.